Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the Dismal Collective here, dropping another hot track for you all tonight. I just got off the wage cage, pulled up in the driveway, and I figured I'd hit the old record button and see what happens. So, I want to just talk about something. This video really shouldn't warrant more than 10 minutes, I guess, to get it all out. God knows I never really get anything done in 10 minutes, but we can, have that as a benchmark to aim for here. Just sitting outside, having a cup of coffee. I probably shouldn't be because I got to get straight to bed. I got to hit the hay, get up in the morning. I'm going into the city. But the coffee at my work is just too good to resist. They got this big Nespresso machine, which, to my understanding, I looked it up actually, and the thing costs like some exorbitant amount of money, like $10,000 or something. It's really high tech, really pricey unit, and it makes just delectable. The coffee is exquisite. It's almost made it hard for me to drink this fucking shit Keurig cups, these like Tim Hortons fucking microplastic in a cup things that I got at my house. But poor people just got to settle for what they can get, and that's going to kind of lead us into the topic of this video: the limits of leverage. LOL. Laugh out loud. Limits of leverage. That is the topic of this video. That is the title of this video. So we're going to get straight into it. What spurred me to want to talk about this? So, like most of my content is derived from these pointless interactions I have with these foids on Facebook dating. And this is no exception. So I was talking to a woman slash girl, whatever, right? She was like 30 years old, a Filipino who'd been in the country for like 2 years, something like that. And anytime I match with an Asian foid on this app, which is, it's somewhat rare for me to get matches in general, but anytime I match with an Asian foid, even if she's a literal hag, like an older hag, I will still tend to try and indulge it because, that's just my proclivity. That's just my forte. So that's what I do. My modus operandi is to construct the bleach imperium, whether genetically or mimetically, right? As Dawkins would say. So, we start talking, and she seems really personable, like very cool personality, very docile. She has, she's 4'11", which she plays up the fact of, she tend to have like some inkling that men are attracted to this. For whatever reasons we're not going to get into. Maybe, Critters might be the guy to field that one. But so, she's like, yeah, I'm just, I've only been in one real relationship. It lasted 8 years. It was with a Filipino guy, but I'm done with Asian men. I'm just done with Asian men. And she's like, I love the color of your eyes. She calls me Ginger, right? Because in the picture on my profile, I had like a bright orange mustache. And usually I'm not that ginger, but in this picture, I don't know if I edited the colors of it or whatever, but the orangeness of the mustache jumps out in contrast with my blue eyes. So she's like, I just love this. I'm very dimorphic. If nothing else, I'm a very dimorphic person. I'm very colorful. I do identify as a POC. I am a person of color. I'm orange and blue. So I'm orange and blue and pink. So I'm a POC, right? Like a real one. And we started getting into like the race question, whatever. Very based on that front. As all Filipino women are, they're very just like default race realists in every sense. Like they're born with your politics already like downloaded into their system. It's, you don't have to do any work on that front. It's so good to be true. And I'm like, what is wrong with this chick? Like, why is she, and okay, so she was a chonker. I will say this, but not even like, you know, nowhere near as fat as most of like the white women that try to chat me up. Not even anywhere near that. She's overweight, but all things considered, given that she's 4'11", she's still light, right? So it's like she's fat. Ideally, she should be like 90 to 100 pounds, but she's like 120 pounds, let's say, whatever. So it gives the like appearance that she's fat, right? But at the same time, that's just like an effect of the distribution rather than her actually being like properly fat, like some of these women who are like, upwards of 200 pounds plus. So, a distinction is to be made there. But we get chatting and chatting, and she says, she only chatted up a few guys and whatever, but they're just very weird. She's like, I don't like Western culture because it's just so aggressive, like the dating market, everybody's out for themselves, it's so aggressive, etc. And I kind of concurred with her. I said, yeah, everybody in the West is sort of forced to like go it alone unless you have some kind of like nepotistic means of getting a date or finding a spouse or significant other. Like, you're part of like a very socially robust friend group, and you have people that are able to like make the connection on your behalf. Otherwise, you're forced to go and fend. We're all like lone wolves. We're all just out to get what we can. We're all out. It's like this kind of Hobbesian war of all against all. And that's why, people are just, they're just cutting right to the chase. This is what I want from you. Here's my deal breakers. If, this is what you need to have to offset this negative trait or characteristic, etc., etc., etc. Very aggressive, very forthcoming, very forthright, very conniving and manipulative, um, whatever, right? And I understood what she was saying. I kind of, it's a reasonable criticism, take it on the chin. So, gonna get right to the meat and potatoes, to the crux of this video. I'm talking with this woman. And, it starts getting a little bit sexual. She says, I can be a bad girl. I can be, I'm not as innocent as I look. I have this other side of me, but, I just got to wait. You got to wait a little bit. It's obviously we'll get to there. I'm not going to keep you waiting for marriage or anything like that. I'm realistic. I understand, you're a man, all this. But she says, I'm not into like dick pictures. Please don't send me one. People always send me them, and it kills the mood. It kills her. Like she says, I just won't want you anymore if you do that. Which is completely understandable. I completely understand this point. Now, when I talk to these women, anyone who's new to this channel, I don't think, most of the listeners who are going to hear this are kind of like well acquainted with my background and like my outlooks on women and stuff like that. But when I'm talking to these women online, it's pretty much a fantasy role play that I engage in because I've been in a, long-term relationship with my girlfriend / common law wife, whatever she's called, for so long. And it was so just like mentally arduous and torturous that this became my outlet. And I shouldn't blame it all on my girlfriend, because I sort of did this my entire life. Like ever since I've had internet access, I used to be on like Plenty of Fish even back in the day, playing a similar game. But I really just upped the ante on it. Like I noticed there is a very strong correlation with every time I'm fighting with my girlfriend, and she's treating me in a very unjust way. that I do tend to like lean in really heavily to kind of cultivating these like um online relationships that never really go any further. And even sometimes they do like physically materialize in the form of me meeting up with them for dates, driving to other cities and going for walks with these women, etc. Even the odd BJ, even the odd, hookup. Very rare, but they do occur. There's one that I've been like dying to talk about on the channel. It's so crazy that I'm almost scared you guys aren't even going to believe it. I'm going to get like accused of lying, but I do have receipts. Maybe it'll just come down to me having to show them because it is quite the story, but I'm going to save that for another day. So I'm on here, I'm LARPing, I'm pretending, that I live this other life. It's my form of escapism to talk to these women and pretty much imagine a life together with them and then throw them away like a napkin, like a piece of tissue paper. And this was one of those cases where I'm like, I don't know how this chick hasn't been snatched up. This doesn't make a lot of sense. There's gotta be something here. There's just gotta be something here. And it's not her looks. It doesn't seem to be her personality. She said, I'm very clingy, right? That was one thing she kept warning me about. She's like, I am over the top clingy. But a lot of guys like that, even a guy like me who's very like, waspy and austere. I'm very introverted and antisocial. I like to be around people, but not around people, if that makes sense. Like I find necessary comfort in knowing you're in the next room, but I don't really want you coming into my room if I'm reading or I'm philosophizing or I'm, doing my thing, gooning, whatever I do, right? Doing push-ups. I don't really want, like, I want you here, but I want you here over there, if that makes sense. But even I'm like, you know what, man? I want one of these like cartoonishly clingy, cartoonishly just docile, over the top Asian girls, right? That would be super cool. And and I'm like, yeah, a lot of guys want that. It'd be like a very nice change of pace from my girlfriend who's just very, very cold, right? Very despondent, like very much just anti-romantic. She loves me and I love her quite dearly. I'll, love that woman the rest of my life, but I despise her and I fucking hate her. And because we have that same kind of like very cold, despondent, like austere personality. And so, I'm like, yeah, that's, a lot of guys would like a very clingy woman because they go from feeling like invisible their whole life to a girl that's literally tugging on their arm, like tugging on their hand, focus on me, look at me, look at me. So I'm like, that can't be it, right? And we get more to the sexual talking, I start prodding her a little bit. A lot of it is like gathering data mining these women for their experiences to know, like I always ask women, do you like, what kind of guys are you attracted to? Have you ever been with this kind of guy? Have you ever been with a white guy before? Have you ever been with a black guy before? What do you think about your own men? What do you think about Asian men, etc.? I will prod and probe them and try to get these answers like that because it's quite useful for constructing like my my kind of like sexual, my socio-sexual view of the dating market, whatever. But um I asked her I popped the question to her. I said, do you like, and I'm going to tone it down because we're on YouTube, basically giving BJs, do you like sucking dick? And she was forthcoming. She said, I'm not going to lie, I don't. I don't. And I'm actually going to go pull the text right now. Because I want to get the precise wording that she gave it. And yeah, as I'm scrolling through this, I see she also said something else that was quite disturbing. I almost borderline don't even want to go into it in this video, but it was like a major weird thing. Oh, we were kind of getting flirtatious. It was getting a little bit X-rated, but not too much. Like it wasn't like describing any sexual acts or anything. Just sort of like, oh, it's hard to control myself with you type thing. And she goes, I ain't no saint. I'm a sinner. And I said, but you look so innocent. She said, I just look like that. She said, I look like a third grade student. And then I just said, yeah, I guess Asian genes preserve your youth. She said, honestly, when I'm in the bus and I see students, I can blend well with them. I don't age. Which, like, that was kind of weird to say. But then I said, not to be like, again, overly graphic, but I said, have you ever sucked a dick before? And she goes, I'm not really a fan at all, if I'm being perfectly honest. That's how she replied. And I said, yeah, okay, understandable. Some women aren't. And she said, I do it sometimes, but not all the time. I would do it just to keep you in the loop, though. Okay, let's go in and analyze that. I would do it just to keep you in the loop. So, first and foremost, that completely, like, determines kind of what, at least I'll speak for myself rather than, like, men in general, but I think I speak for all men when I say, if she's doing it for, like, practical reasons, like to keep you happy, like it's some kind of a token, or whatever, it's just something that she's doing to placate you, it ceases to have all value. Like it just completely, I mean, what men want is they want the woman to be like ravenous when she's doing it. Like she's ripping your pants off to fucking go down on you, like she's like in the porns that we're all addicted to watching, right? That's what men want. We don't want to, I would do it for you to keep you in the loop. When she said that, I'm telling you, when she said that, I went from imagining this fake life with her where I'm like, in another world, obviously I could never like do this, but in another world, in another set of circumstances, man, I would really probably commit, wholeheartedly to this woman. Like she just seems to be like super cool. She's sort of right up my alley. To with one comment. First, the fact that she said she doesn't really like doing it. I mean, and this video isn't supposed to be about like, oral sex or whatever. I know Thomas White, he said, Thomas has like the worst takes ever. Bar none, Thomas has like the worst takes, especially when it pertains to like topics involving women, which is like mostly what he talks about. But he was saying that if you are like, as a man, if you're into receiving oral sex from a woman, that there's like something wrong with you or whatever. He almost equated it with like anal sex or whatever, which is like sodomy. Two totally different things, not even close, right? But oral sex can be better than like penetrative or vaginal sex for sure, right? Especially when like she's into it, she wants to do it. Most women don't, but you will find the odd one that's actually like she wants to do it more than you might even want to like receive it. Like she's very much into that sort of thing. But I was like, man, I could never, ever For as much shit, I'll take 10 years of abuse from a woman. I'll take a lifetime. I'll take 100 years of abuse from the same woman. Day in and day out, day in and day out. I'll take all of this gin rummy and these like mental, psychological warfare games, all this stuff. But if she wouldn't do that, I'm kind of out. I'm kind of like not interested, right? Because first of all, it's not fair because I get really into going down when I do it. As long as she's not, like stinky, which most of the time, like the ones that I'm scraping the bottom of the dumpster, the bottom of the barrel for are stinky, and I wouldn't go anywhere near them with my face. I don't even want to go near these bitches with my finger. But I mean, provided that I'm genuinely attracted to them, and they're hygienic and they don't offend my olfactory senses, then sure, why not? Not only will I do it, I'll go fucking crazy on it, right? I'll get like really into it. I'll start going like beyond the Call of Duty. And all I ask for is the same, right? All I ask for is like reciprocity, And if they won't give that, then I'm out. Second of all, like if she's not really giving oral, then I don't even know how sex works at that point. Like, do you just like what, like stuff it straight into her vag and like get it done and then you're done? Like, come on, man. I don't even get how that would work. So I'm like, I haven't even touched really on the core point that I intended to in making this video, which is the limits of leverage. So women have almost a absolute stranglehold on the leverage in the dating market for a number of reasons, like number one, the demographic in ratio imbalance, supply demand dynamic, and things that Dashboard and Steve Hoka have talked about in the past. That definitely heavily plays into like how they're able to gain so much leverage. Number two, just they're really adept at implementing the female method of war, like heaping undue praise, hoarding praise within their cohort, etc. And number three, just that they have an anatomical superiority. Eggs are more expensive than sperma, etc. We all know these tropes that have been, in the manosphere for over a decade now. So they pretty much have like an absolute hegemony. And as such, they can't even conceive of the idea that you would not just give in to their demands, like regardless. They're not really willing to negotiate at all. It's like my way or the highway, like Limp Bizkit. My way or the highway. It's kind of how Israel engages in delegation, in negotiations with foreign ambassadors and stuff like that. They do not come. They just say, we have America. We have the American industrial complex. Or the military industry, whatever, right? We are not going to negotiate. Do as we say. We are the global hegemon. Do it. And, it's no coincidence that I've and others have compared the people that inhabit the aforementioned state, Israel, to women. Very much so. Very comparable to women. In that they don't really negotiate. They just kind of gain a monopoly and then they go and push everybody around and they don't allow other people to kind of They don't allow their fallen foes to preserve any of their dignity or pride or save face at all. They just, once they deprive you of all the leverage to push back against any of like their demands or whatever, you just want a fair and equal negotiation, and you're being denied that. But the difference with the dating market is there is a limit to leverage. It's when you price yourself right out of the market. You pretty much discount your own leverage by keeping it so out of reach, or by just having so many of these deal breakers that it's like, this woman, the reason she was sitting on the dating market was not apparent, you know, right out of the gate from the onset. It was like, what is wrong with this woman? She should be snatched up by somebody by this point. It's not apparently obvious. It's not glaringly obvious in the way that it is with some of these women that I match with, where they're like, just extremely dysgenic, or some of them are physically challenged. Some of them are physically disabled. They'll say, I have heart murmurs and cerebral palsy. I have Bell's palsy, and I have like all these type of issues here, right? I have MS. Some of them have like multiple sclerosis and stuff like that. Some of the women I match with, some of them are boons that are like 400 pounds, and they might be salt of the earth. They might be like some of the sweetest, kindest people in the world. But even the most loneliest, disenfranchised, incelibate, excess male, useless eater is probably not going to bite the bullet. Now, this is just the kind of cap off the point of this video. Yes, women have absolute power. As soon as you decide that you voluntarily want to participate in the dating game. If you're not some kind of Chad, if you're not some kind of, 98th percentile good-looking guy, if you don't have a lot of wealth, if you don't have like a nepotistic social network where people can help you out, you don't have a family that can just pay the dowry or whatever, you are going to be entering into a situation where you don't have leverage. You're trying to pry a tree stump out of the ground, but you don't have a long enough lever arm to get the kind of mechanical advantage required to really pry that fucker out. And no matter what people tell you, no matter what kind of pickup coaches, no matter what kind of manosphereans, what kind of male supremacists, they'll tell you, just do this, just do that, just do this, just do that. It's not going to change the fact that the lever arm is not long enough to get a proper fucking advantage. And so when you decide to enter into a relationship without enough bargaining chips, without a long enough lever, you're going to end up like me, old Uncle Dismal. You're going to end up like my grandfather did, right? You're going to end up getting just run through the ringer, worn to a nub your whole life. You'll never be able to push back. It's going to erode your mental health. You'll get abraded. You'll get fucking worn down. And that's why a lot of people, they're like, you know what, man? They see these couples out in public, like the Supreme Gentleman, always watching people, always watching how happy they are. You don't understand, though. You don't see what's going on under the hood, because those guys have no leverage at all. Whatever she wants to do in that relationship is completely, he's at her behest. He's at her, on a whim, right? She's the decision maker. She is in the driver's seat. Now, he can always opt out of the dating market. And that's what Foids fail to realize sometimes. They almost assume that either A, every guy will just remain in the dating market because he has such a strong biological imperative to reproduce and do so, or that there will always be enough guys in the dating market that they can kind of perpetuate the scam or the scheme, into perpetuity. They'll never run out of people to hold the bag, or run out of people to push that, push that boulder up the hill in a Sisyphusian manner. But that is where they're wrong, because like even the biggest giga simps in the world, the guys that are willing to just do anything to remain in that dating market, they will do anything to scratch and claw and prevent themselves from being thrown in the water with the rest of the excess cargo. It's not going to matter. They're going to they're realizing that it's all in vain regardless. They're, for all intents and purposes, they're ending up in the exact same situation as a Western decline anyway. So it's not worth the effort. They're just, people are creatures of laziness, where they take the path of least resistance, provided they're still able to kind of get satisfied in the ways that they feel to be most important. But it's the same thing with white women, right? White women are no longer the most valuable demographic of women. But that's, when I say that, that's not exactly a true statement. You have to look at the game theoretics of why technically they still are, but in practice they aren't. It doesn't actually de facto play out that way, because they've sort of juggernauted themselves out of relevancy. They've set the bar so high for themselves that it's not even, they're no longer worth what they can get, if that makes sense. So it's almost kind of like I don't know how to call it, maybe hypergamous overshoot. It's like they overshot the mark a little bit. They gained the monopoly, they created their union, and then they eliminated all competitors, and they had an absolute diktat. But nobody could really meet the standard, and they also let themselves go so much that there's almost more incentive to just be in celibate, or to just be lonely, or to just be TFL, right? So it's like a juggernaut discount. And then suddenly from that, Asians emerge. They rise to the top as like the new front runner, the new forerunners for like the most, de facto, the most valuable women. And this game will just go on and on and on and on forever. Eventually, they will kind of suffer the same fate, in my opinion. They'll be such a prized commodity by all the guys that were... And this, again, I'm not saying anything that people weren't already talking about 15 years ago, but it's just sometimes it's, it bears repeating. So it's, again, maybe just to provide one more analogy before I wrap this one up. It's almost like, imagine a boss, right? And he wants you to just work to the bone. He wants you to work till your soul falls out of your fucking skin suit, right? He just wants you to grind and grind and grind and grind. And every employer in the entire economic system has come together and basically said, we're going to do the same. Like whatever employee comes through our door, we're just going to grind them into the dust. We're going to turn them into sawdust, right? And they think they're so clever because they say, well, they're going to have to fucking side with one of us because you need some job. You need a job, like, and everybody's got to work somewhere. So they're going to fall into one of our laps, and they're not going to have any leverage. They're not going to have any fucking bargaining power whatsoever. But they fail to realize that only goes so far before even homelessness becomes a more attractive option, before sewer slide becomes a more attractive option. It's always optional whether or not you want to play the game. And there's only one game in town. You're not going to go your own way. You're not going to you're not going to create a new parallel economy on, BTC or crypto, whatever, crypto bank, whatever the fuck. It's not going to happen. There's only one game in town. There's if you voluntarily opt into it, you will just be thrown around by like a bag in the wind. But it's almost like Max Stirner, right? Where you have to somewhat recognize the system in order for its legitimacy to obtain. You don't have to work. You do have to work, provided you want shelter, provided you want food, or you do have to play these games where, like, you might be with a woman that doesn't give blowjobs. And that might just be the way that the cookie crumbles for you, provided that you view sex as a privation and you need to be in that dating market. But if you are willing to just say, you know what, that's a deal breaker for me. There is no condition under which I will accept that as an arrangement that I will be a party to or that I will partake in. You can bow out the whole game. And a lot of people are doing this. And then what you end up with is this situation where you have like a ghost market. It goes to like second order game theory. It gets extremely complex and like dynamically convoluted. But sometimes people will put these things up for sale on like Facebook Marketplace, for example, or Craigslist or whatever. And even at what should ideally be considered like a very fair price for the thing. Say you buy a pair of shoes for like $250, very nice pair of shoes, sneakers, and they just don't fit you. And now you're trying to sell them for like $40, right? You've dropped the price by like more than a factor of 5, and yet people just don't care. Like there's nobody in the market for that particular item at that particular time, at that particular price. And so it can just sit there and it can sit on the shelf and collect dust. Because there's certain things where it's like, there's nothing wrong with the item. Just like there's nothing wrong with some of these women that are still on the market. But they are trying to set their value, and you are trying to set your willingness and the two things they're so close to making a deal, but there's just like this little gap, this little unbridgeable gap, or a little bit of a gulf that the parties just can't seem to reconcile. And nobody is willing to move. And so they'll just sit there and they'll run down the clock. They'll run out of time. And you'll be lonely and they'll be just, doing their thing, working and out with the girls on the weekends with the girls. But it's just like nobody's willing to drop their price, and you're not willing to offer, you're not putting another bid in. And you've reached the limits of leverage. It's only when the man says, okay, I need sex. I can't do without it. I need a relationship. I can't do without it. I need to have a child. I need to be a father. I can't do without it. Then and only then he gives up all of his self-determination, forfeits it to her by entering into the market. And that's it. So, I don't know, this video went extremely long. It might have been pointless. I don't know. Hopefully you guys find some type of value in this video. Dismal days indeed.